Hi everyone, thank you for joining our presentation. My name is Maite Tapia, and together with my colleagues at Michigan State University, we've been doing some exciting work around the latest GM strike. And today I'll talk about our preliminary results of a survey we did of GM workers on strike. So on Sunday, September 15, 2019, the UAW called for a work stoppage against General Motors. This lasted 40 days, making it the longest UAW strike against GM since 1998. And it was the first national strike since 2007. So here you see a picture of the UAW workers on strike together with my kids, Ellie and May. So our project started by visiting the picket lines and hearing from the workers themselves. When we asked why they were on strike, many talked about the dire conditions of the temp workers, even though they were not temp workers themselves. They also talked about GM's tiered job structure. At the same time, within IR, unions are often portrayed as insider organizations that mostly fight for their own core members. So this prompted us the simple research question, under which conditions do workers strike in solidarity with temp workers? So when we look at the literature, there's a lot on unions and temporary workers. Unions are sometimes seen as insider organizations for senior, male, or workers on typical contracts. Within the union strategy literature, there's scholars that talk about unions using temp workers as buffers for insiders, or being opposed to temp workers, or trying to fight for equal treatment for temp workers and traditional workers. That being said, there's much less work on worker opinions and the agency they have during key decision points such as strikes. So briefly, when we look at the literature on solidarity, and solidarity being defined as feelings of being in it together, we kind of see two camps. So on the one hand, you have instrumental conditions or material conditions that could prompt solidarity, and on the other hand, more value-based. Some scholars have argued that when workers face economic stress, they become more solidaristic. There's a sense of reciprocal sympathy. Workers recognize or understand their co-workers. On the other hand, there's more value-based conditions towards feelings of solidarity. So when there's a sense of class consciousness, close ties or shared values, when there's a sense of injustice. So this prompts us to two hypotheses, one more focusing on the financial hardship and the other one focusing on the values. In essence, we draw on Weber's logics, the logic of instrumental rationality and the logic of value rationality. So hypothesis one is workers on typical contracts who have experienced financial hardship are more likely to demonstrate solidarity with temp workers. Hypothesis two, solidarity of workers on typical contracts with temp workers is motivated by personal value priorities. Now, in terms of the setting, we were very lucky to be in close contact with two GM plants in Lansing, Michigan, with UAW Local 652 and 602, and had the opportunity to survey their workers at the Union Hall during the strike mid-October. We had quite a large response rate of about 44%. In terms of our analysis, feel free to, now that I will present the analysis, feel free to pause at any moment. So we used structural equation modeling and split up the data into two groups, the traditional and the non-traditional. For the traditional workers, these are the tier 1 workers, and the non-traditional workers, these are the workers in progression or tier 2, as well as the temporary workers. Then solidarity is measured based on two items: if the reason they were on strike was because of the conditions of temp workers and because of the wage structure in general. Financial hardship is based on hardship around housing, food, and medical attention. So in our model, we tested only, in our analysis, we tested only the direct relationship between hardship and solidarity and between identification and solidarity. And even though this was not part of our model, we wanted to see also whether workers that have longer tenure, if this would result in less solidarity. And overall, we would say that the model had adequate to good fit. Again, feel free to pause at any moment. So now for the results. First, when we look at traditional employees, we found indeed that hardship, the people who had financial hardship expressed support or high levels of solidarity. Also, people who identified as liberals expressed high levels of solidarity. And even though we did not hypothesize anything in terms of tenure, we did see as well that people with traditional workers with longer tenure expressed low levels in terms of solidarity. Now, when we look at the results for the non-traditional employees, here we see something different happening. So there's no significant relationship in terms of financial hardship and solidarity, but we do find that people who, the stronger their identity with being conservative, the lower the solidarity for temp workers or the wage structure during the strike. And then also similarly in terms of their tenure, the longer tenure they had, the less solidarity was part of their reasons to go on strike. So to briefly go over these key findings, so financial hardship was significant for the traditionals, but not for non-traditionals. Liberal identification, significant for traditional towards solidarity, but not for non-traditional. Conservative identification, there was a negative relationship towards solidarity for non-traditional. And then tenure, it was significant for both traditionals and non-traditionals in a negative sense. So now for our preliminary implications, we do see support for both hypotheses, and we do see that traditional workers strike also for the conditions of temp workers, especially when they identify as liberals or when they have experienced financial hardship themselves. When we look at just the non-traditionals, there is some intra-group fragmentation in that the longer some of those workers have tenure or the stronger their conservative identification, they do not support the strike for reasons of solidarity. So just to conclude, in general, we find actually very high levels of support for temp workers. However, there is some variation in terms of the support when we look at financial hardship, values, and tenure, especially with regards to the traditional workers. Now, in terms of the next step, we're very excited to start the interviewing process to understand kind of the logics behind this. And what we've also done so far is we've conducted a second survey in January 2020 to understand essentially whether this solidarity during the strike then also translated at the moment of voting. And we're excited to do some more analyses there and present that data real soon. So now I just want to thank you for listening to this. I look forward to the discussion with all of you, but I want to especially thank Mark Stroley to help us tremendously during this process, as well as the leadership with the UAW Local 602 and Local 652 for their support. I also want to thank our students, Dassam Yang, Carolyn Brown, and Dana Stoblin, for their help with data collection and spending many hours in the union halls with us. Thank you.